All right, welcome everybody to the Jim Acosta Show. It is Monday. As you can see, Michael Cohen is back for another edition of Michael Monday. And, we got to start off. It's 99 days into this presidency, and Trump is obsessed with his terrible, horrible, no good, very bad poll numbers. Michael, Trump's poll numbers are in free fall. ABC News saying Donald Trump has the lowest 100-day job approval rating of any president in the last 80 years, with public pushback on many of his policies and extensive economic discontent, including broad fears of a recession. This is according to a new ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll. Same thing for Elon Musk. AP reporting that Elon Musk, just 33% of U.S. adults have a favorable view of Elon Musk. And Trump is responding to these poll numbers by calling the press the enemy, saying that these people should be investigated for election fraud, and add in the Fox News pollster while you're at it. Michael, he's pissed off at Fox News, too, because they put out a poll showing the exact same thing, that his numbers are tanking.
Fox News, Ipsos, ABC, Washington Post, calling them, as you just rightfully said, enemy of the state. There really needs to be legitimate understanding by your viewers, by my viewers, by everyone.
Yeah.
How dangerous it is when you call the press the enemy of the state. That is so right out of an authoritarian playbook. Let me be very clear. He does not like the results of the poll number. And that's understandable. Nobody wants to have poll numbers that are not just below water. It's below water where somebody's sitting on your head and they're drowning you. That's how when
he's drowning himself. He's drowning himself.
The only person who he just beat out for the lowest number happens to be himself from the 2017 for the worst 100 days. So if you don't like the results of a poll, what do? How about do something that's going to raise you in the polls, that make you favorable? He's tanking on the economy. He's tanking on immigration now, which was his strong point. That's how he won the election. He's tanking on that too. When you send off a 4-year-old child with stage 4 metastatic cancer, right, to El Salvador or to
Honduras,
another internment camp, or worse, right, with no medication, no anything, I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care what somebody wants to say. It's wrong. It's cruel. It's un-American. And that's why his poll numbers suck. If he wants to change it, change it. Do something good, for God's sakes. Wouldn't you and I, by the way, would you not turn around on next Michael Monday and say, hey, Michael, Donald did something fantastic. He went ahead, he got into Air Force One, he went off to El Salvador, rang the doorbell to that prison, got a hold of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, brought him back to the United States, bought him a dinner, and then, said sorry and, gave him a MAGA hat and said, I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
I would say good job.
He's not going to do that. And you know how he is, Michael. He's pig-headed. And he's just not going to change course. I mean, I think that the Atlantic just came out with an interview this morning where they asked him about the tariffs and the markets, and might the markets hit a certain low point where you'll turn around and change course on tariffs. And he said, no, I've been talking about this for 30 years. I'm not going to change course on this. And you mentioned these kids who are being deported. And let's just be very clear about this. NBC News reporting, we'll talk about this a little bit later with Olivia Troye too. 2 U.S. citizen children were sent on their mother's deportation flight to Honduras without the opportunity to speak to attorneys, leaving a 4-year-old boy with stage 4 cancer without access to his medication, according to the National Immigration Project. I mean, Michael, I'm starting to think of this as, I was thinking about, Trump's good at branding. Sometimes you and I are pretty good at branding. These are MAGA monsters. These are MAGA monsters. When you deport a 4-year-old U.S. citizen kid with stage 4 cancer, I'm sorry, you are a monster. You're not a human being. And this is what the public has gotten a taste of. They elected Donald Trump to deal with inflation, deal with the economy. He hasn't done that. He's tanked the markets. And now they're deporting kids with stage 4 cancer. That's why people are pissed.
Said, MAGA morons are governing America. That's what it stands for. Only a moron would do something like this. Create a policy, not a concept of a policy, but an actual policy. So those people who are going to be subject to deportation know who they are, know what's going on. You don't show up, for example, at a nightclub in Colorado, right? And then just start grabbing everybody, young women in dresses, guys wearing suits, and everybody somehow is now MS-13. I didn't know that MS-13 was that big. I mean, it's like every single person now that they're grabbing is MS-13.
Well, they see people who look like they're Hispanic or Latino, and they just automatically make the assumption that these people are in the country illegally.
In all fairness, Jim, you're Hispanic.
I am, and
By the way, I am. My grandmother was born in Argentina.
I was born in Virginia, just for future reference to the Trump administration. I was born in Virginia, and I have the birth certificate. But Michael, I mean, this is the issue. People might want, of course, border enforcement to be stepped up. There's no question about that. You look at the polls, that's reasonable. They might even say, yeah, I'll sign on for gang members and criminals and people who shouldn't be violent, people who should be in the country, obviously. But,
sign me up.
Sure. But a mother with a kid with stage 4 cancer, I'm sorry, you're behaving like a monster. You're behaving as less than a human being. And
you're behaving the way I remember hearing stories from my father, who is a concentration camp survivor from Poland, from Auschwitz. All right. This is the sort of shit that dictators and supreme leaders and monarchs and kings and despots and autocrats do.
Yeah.
This isn't the United States of America. In fact, I have to tell you, when I first saw it, I'm embarrassed. I'm like embarrassed in front of the world. This is not who America is. This is not who we ever were. I mean, imagine we're now comparing ourselves to the worst of the worst in the world.
Yeah.
When did something like this happen to us?
It happened because he was put back in office, Michael, and you and I and a lot of other people were warning people publicly over the airwaves. This is not a situation where people can say, well, you people in the media didn't report this. No, it was reported time and again. Donald Trump was out on the campaign trail and said he wanted to go after the enemy from within. They were waving signs at the RNC last summer with signs that said mass deportations now. This was all out in the open. This was crystal clear to people, and they made a decision, and now they're having to deal with it. The other thing, Michael,
all I know is I've been calling this, I've been yelling this from the rooftops forever. And by the way, you know who else is yelling this from the rooftops? The same guy that got tossed out of the briefing room and had his credentials taken from him. And of course, to those people that are watching, I am referring to the great Jim Acosta.
Oh, well, yeah.
Who lost his credentials. Oh, you forgot I was talking about you?
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, no, again, this is not one of the situations where you guys in the media didn't report this or there weren't people out there not telling us this. And I do understand that, yes, there are people out there who agree and understand that that's the case. But Michael, the other thing you and I need to talk about, because it's been a while since you and I have caught up, they arrested this judge in Milwaukee, accusing this judge of Judge Hannah Dugan of interfering with an ICE operation for trying to help an undocumented immigrant get away from enforcement and so on. And this was brought up at the White House press briefing earlier today. And this is according to the New Republic, the Trump administration is open to arresting Supreme Court justices. If you listen to the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, Peter Doocy over at Fox, said, you guys arrested a Milwaukee County judge for allegedly helping illegal immigrants get away. Doocy asked, are you looking at other judges? Would you even arrest somebody higher up on the judicial food chain, like a federal judge or a Supreme Court justice? And if you look at the answer from Caroline Leavitt, she does not rule it out. She does not say, no, we would not do that. And she says, anyone who is breaking the law or obstructing federal enforcement officials from doing their jobs is putting themselves at risk of being prosecuted. Absolutely. Michael, what was your response to that? You saw Kash Patel tweeting this out and so on. What do you think?
Sure. Well, look, they're all feckless. The Kash Patels and the rest of the Caroline Leavitt, whatever the talking point memo is for the day, understand that that's exactly what they say. It's what they have to say.
Yeah.
You do remember approximately 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court came down with a decision, and that was in regard to the firing, as an example, of Judge Boasberg because Trump didn't like the decision. The Supreme Court understands exactly what's going on here. One of the fears that they have is that I wrote about it in my Substack. Why people keep ignoring what Trump is saying. So far, what he said he intended to do, he is actually doing. It's not like he's hiding about it. He is doing it in plain sight.
Yes.
So what was their big fear? Their big fear, Jim, was that he would fire Judge Boasberg, federal court judge, which is a lifetime appointment by another president. And their fear was not about Boasberg. It was about themselves. That if he could fire a federal court judge, why could he then not fire a Supreme Court judge? The big
they're talking about
fear, if they could arrest a judge on this and make this stick, create a precedent, why could they not arrest Judge Boasberg? Why could they not arrest Judge Engoron, right? In the civil case, the Tish James New York civil case. Why could they not arrest Judge Juan Merchan in the criminal case, New York, the Alvin Bragg case? Why could they not arrest a Supreme Court justice? Why could they not, if the precedent exists? Because this group is lawless. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in due process. They don't believe in rule of law, despite the fact they keep telling everybody that they are the law and order party.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly, Trump wants an authoritarian style government. They see the executive branch as sort of the premier branch of the three branches of government. That's not how it works in this country. And, Caroline Leavitt could have gone out there into the briefing room today and taken that question and said, Peter, give me a break. We're not going to go out and arrest Supreme Court justices. They're not going to. She didn't say that. She didn't say that.
Because they want everyone to be in fear and apprehension for their safety. Look, there's the reason, Jim, why they showed the video of the deportees, in El Salvador.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Ripping, shaving their heads, stripping them out, marching them where literally I wake up, my back hurts with their head between their legs, like in a crawl position that used to do to the fraternity pledges. I mean, they wanted to show the brutality of it all. In that way, well, maybe Jim Acosta saw this. Maybe Jim Acosta doesn't want to have his beautiful hair shaven off. Maybe he's not able to walk like a duck like that, stripped out and so on. Maybe these things will get to him and he'll say, you know what? I'm not going to say anything negative about anybody in this administration. I'm going to cower. I'm going to do what so many others are doing. I'm going to, including some of the law firms that capitulated to the extortion to the tune of $1 billion of free legal work for this administration. This is all obscene. Again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. It is un-American. It's unconstitutional. It violates due process. It is insane. And that's why I say this all the time. This administration, they are literally following page by page. To those of you who are a little bit too lazy to read the 922-page manifesto entitled Project 2025.
Yeah, no, it's all there.
No problem.
That's right. Yeah.
It's long. You don't need to. You got Jim Acosta here to help break it down. You have Michael Cohen on Michael Monday.
Yeah.
We will break it down for you and explain to you. You see, I've been calling this since 2018 when I testified live. That was 1 out of 7 live before, the House Oversight Committee. And God rest his soul, Elijah Cummings. And I told you what was going to happen.
Yeah. I know. No, but the other thing about this, Michael, is there's a bumbling, sort of incompetent aspect to all of this. I mean, Trump, on the same day he's complaining about these poll numbers, he continues to fantasize about Canada becoming part of the United States. He's on Truth Social. They're having the elections up in Canada, and they're deciding whether to extend the Liberal Party's decade in power. They may pick new Prime Minister Mark Carney there, or hand over the opposition, or hand control over to the opposition conservatives, and the populist leader there. This is all according to the AP, Pierre Poilievre, which I had to practice that name a little earlier today. Apparently, even the Canadians have a tough time pronouncing his name. But one of the reasons why the Canadians are deciding the way that they're deciding today, they're voting the way they're voting today, is because it's kind of a big middle finger to Trump. They're sick and tired of seeing Trump fantasize about Canada becoming part of the United
Forgetting
States.
about the fact,
Yeah.
half my family live in Toronto.
Yeah.
And when I speak to them, in fact, I'm technically a Canadian citizen, even though I don't have a passport or anything like that. My father, when I was born, my father was a
Yeah.
Canadian citizen. It's a whole legal thing. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here, they're sick and tired of the denigration of their country. The
Yeah.
same way you would be sick and tired if they were doing it to America, as I would be. I mean, they're poking at Canada every single time that he gets a chance. It's they would be glorious. They're broke. If it wasn't for us, they would be invaded. Who's invading Canada? England?
Yeah.
Donald. They're already a territory of the UK. What are you talking about? Nobody
Yeah.
is attacking Canada other than you. And
Yeah.
maybe Vladimir Putin, but I don't even think Trump would
No, but
allow that.
I mean,
It's too close to our border.
but up in Canada, I mean, Justin Trudeau's on his way out. It looked like maybe this Pierre Poilievre, and again, I'm trying to say his name correctly. It looked like maybe he might get into power there, become the prime
Nah,
minister.
I'm pretty
But
sure it's going to be Carney will win.
but it's going to be Mark Carney, and you got everybody from Mike Myers. I mean, you name it. Any Canadian celebrity these days is basically giving the middle finger to the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump is having this effect on politics around the world, where you're seeing progressives and liberals and all kinds of different places, having a comeback in part because of it's a reaction to Trump. And I suspect that they're sort of the leading indicator in all of this, and that the U.S. will be next.
And then what happens? They turn around, they call it fake news, enemy of the state, simply because he
Yeah.
doesn't like it. But I'll tell you,
Yeah.
the news, mainstream media, cable news media, they get it all wrong. Think about this. So Trump sits down with Zelensky, and why he wasn't wearing a black suit, I don't know. Truth is,
Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that.
Jim,
Give
I've
me a
never
break.
even seen. I don't think Trump even owns a black suit. I've never in my 15 years working for him, and then years thereafter.
Yeah, what's with that? He always wears the same suit.
I've never seen him in a black suit other than a tuxedo. Never
You
have.
go to the Pope's funeral and you're wearing a blue suit.
After
Again,
you were asked not to. But
yeah.
So this is the part that really bothers me about the mainstream and cable news.
Yeah.
They're fawning over Trump because he sat down in the Basilica with Zelensky. All of a sudden, everything has changed, right? We sat down. We had a great meeting. It was a great meeting. It was beautiful. Quite frankly, it was wonderful. And then you say to yourself, what do you think was said at that meeting? So substantial, so significant that Trump is now going to turn away from his bromance with Putin on behalf of Zelensky because they sat down for 15, 20 minutes and had some wonderful. What can you accomplish in 15, 20 minutes? Seriously, did you now settle European war in 15 minutes?
Apparently, Trump is now saying he thinks Zelensky is ready to give up Crimea. He said this to reporters, after meeting with Zelensky at the Vatican, and he said, "Oh, I think so," in response to a question on that. Apparently, Zelensky said last week that Ukraine is not going to give up Crimea. They're not going to accept U.S. recognition of Russian annexation of Crimea. And so, Trump just says things and he just lies. He just makes stuff up.
Just like he said about China. They've been engaging in conversations multiple. He won't tell you with who. China comes out and says, no, we haven't.
We haven't.
We're not backing down either. I have a thought in regard to this whole thing with Zelensky. Obviously, he knows that it's one of the things that's bringing his poll numbers down. He's desperate for a win. So maybe he's thinking if he smoozes because Trump, as you know, Jim, can be very, very, very engaging. And, he really
just ask Bill Maher,
can.
But anyway,
And by the way, it's a fact. I've seen it happen 100 times. People that he curses out on a Monday come in and they're like, he's not such a bad guy. He's very charming. He really can do that. But he's not walking away from Putin. He was basically sending a message through the media without having to make the phone call to Putin. Listen, you're fucking me up. I don't like it. You need to come to the table, do something so that I don't keep getting my ass kicked lo and behold, what does Putin do? We're going to have a 48-hour ceasefire so that Putin can have his military parade.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. Two people who don't fall for the charming bullshit act that Trump puts on from time to time, Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, I mean, Vladimir Putin is not fooled at all. He knows Donald Trump all too well. I mean, as I've said many times on the show, I'll say it again. At every turn, Donald Trump sides with Vladimir Putin. Find me an example. If somebody could find me an example, I'll be happy to put it out there on this program. Find me an example where Trump did not side with Vladimir Putin ultimately. He might say on day one, oh, stop, Vladimir, stop bombing the civilians. But then in a couple of days, he'll turn around and do something that is completely supportive of Vladimir Putin, like this idea that Zelensky's just going to give up Crimea. I mean, the Ukrainians are going to continue to maintain their right to their sovereignty, and there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Michael, great to see you, my friend.
Always missed you at the Substack Gala. You were sorely missed.
Oh, that was
next one. They plan on doing another one
next time. Yeah, that was great. It was big success for Substack, and they've got these posters up around DC that say the media is not dead; it's on Substack, which is fantastic. Yeah. It's really good stuff. Good to see you, Michael.
Fantastic, Jim. Missed you. Thank you, brother.
All right,
thank you to everybody who's watching.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It's Michael Cohen. Another edition of Michael Monday. Going to bring Olivia Troye in now because Olivia and I want to talk about this immigration situation. I mean, Michael's right. One of the reasons why Donald Trump's poll numbers are tanking right now is because the public has essentially rejected what Trump is doing on immigration. He has some support in the Republican Party. He's always going to have some support in the Republican Party. You see, a litany of Trump officials going on Fox all the time, defending his actions on immigration. So that's going to prop up Trump's poll numbers to some extent. Olivia, great to see you. How you doing?
Hi. One day at a time here.
One day at a time here.
Oh, wait. How am I doing? Really?
Yeah.
Can you hear the screaming goat?
Wait, that's do it again.
Screaming goat. Hold on.
It's a screaming goat.
Can you hear the scream? I don't know if you can hear that. That's how I'm doing.
Well, we can just imagine. It's one of those screaming goats that you see in the commercials and stuff. But no, absolutely, that's where we all are right now, Olivia. I did want to talk to you about. I mean, we're at 100 days. Tomorrow's 100 days, and I mean, you and I sort of, cut from the same cloth, when it comes to this viewpoint, and that is, it's still a bit surreal that Trump is even back in the White House. It's kind of maddening and bewildering all at the same time. And every day is another day that ends in Y. But, and you and I talk about this from time to time, he still has the capacity, and his people still have the capacity to reach new depths that just absolutely terrify and shock you and disgust you at the same time. And one of those stories would be these U.S. citizen children who were sent out of the country with their mother to Honduras over the last few days. One of them, a 4-year-old boy with stage 4 cancer without access to his medication. That's according to the attorney for this family. Your thoughts on all of this? I mean, to me, it is one of the more appalling things that I think we've ever seen from Donald Trump. And there's a lot in that list.
Yeah. Well, first, I think this is absolutely disgusting and deplorable. I saw the reporting where they had lined the White House today for the background for journalists with the illegal aliens that they've deported. Yeah. And, they're claiming those are all the criminals, right? But I think they're using it as a shield and a cloak for the other atrocities that they're doing, such as a violation of these children's U.S. citizens' rights. And so when I saw Tom Homan, I have to say I was disgusted when he's out there and he's like, well, these women have a choice. And he kind of skirts the issue, and he's trying to avoid the fact that, like, he claims to be for lawfulness, but instead he's engaging in basically a total trashing of our Constitution and the judicial process. And to have that child, I guess what we need to be demanding, and I would say that we all need to be raising hell about this, to be blunt, when will those children come home? When does that 4-year-old? They have a right, and that 4-year-old with horrible cancer, when is that child coming back to the U.S. so he can get the treatment that he needs in medicine.
Yeah. And keep in mind, we have to underline this. Um, these are citizens of
Yeah.
the United States. Um, Trump wants to get rid of birthright citizenship. He wants the Supreme Court to give him the green light to get rid of birthright citizenship. That has not occurred. And so they are in violation of the law. And I guess, Marco Rubio was asked about this, and Tom Homan was asked about this, and they're basically putting out the same talking points. I'm assuming they were all sent around, which is, well, the mother was given the chance to take them with her, and so that's what she did. The attorneys are saying the kids did not get due process. And again, we're getting back to this issue of due process. And, to me, I mean, Marco Rubio is the child of Cuban immigrants who came to this country. I mean, I can say this because I know from my experience as a Cuban American, it's a bit outlandish for somebody of Cuban descent to take this kind of hardline position when Cubans had sort of a carve out. They had special treatment, special refugee status for many, many years in this country, and just to be so cruel and heartless, to me, it's sickening. I mean, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, and it should be very concerning because this is now the pivoting of lacking due process with a number of individuals now, right? So we're disappearing 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds now. The 4-year-old is sick. Is that what we're doing? And to your point about Marco Rubio, he should be ashamed. He should be ashamed of himself because Marco Rubio that I was hearing in policy meetings when I was in the White House in the first Trump administration was sitting there advocating for citizens in Latin America, was sitting there advocating for these children. There were heated discussions. Honestly, when I saw this, I was disgusted because it reminded me of the child separation issue that happened in the first Trump administration, which was very contested internally. I know that the public has very strong feelings about it, but I can tell you in these policy meetings, I'm thinking about the types of lawyers that were in that room. And I'm remembering people like Chad Mizell, who now serves as a chief of staff to Pam Bondi. And these are the people calling the shots. And they had some pretty atrocious viewpoints back then on the child separation issue. This is child separation on steroids because these are U.S. citizens that are just being deported. And a 1-minute phone call, I think, is what they reported about this woman, and the judge placing the phone call, trying to reach the woman to verify that what he was hearing from the claims the immigration people were correct. And they find out that they're already on the flight. And so I guess that's why I'm saying my question is, when Pam Bondi and Tom Homan, will these children be brought back to the United States? Or is it another situation where you're just going to deflect and ignore the courts? You're going to ignore this judge again, who's a Reagan appointee, I believe, right? I mean, this judge is asking questions. This is a conservative judge that has ruled in favor of the Trump administration on previous issues. And he's saying, I have concerns about the way this was handled and done. And
exactly.
And in a sense, right? Because if we're going to do this and we're going to skirt the law, it's not just these children, these U.S. citizens. Who's next? That is a problem, a pattern of behavior here.
Yeah, I mean, this is according to NBC News. The 4-year-old boy who is actively receiving treatment for a rare form of cancer was flown to Honduras without his medication. That is according to a lawyer with the National Immigration Project. And, to me, when it's explained to the officials that he has cancer, that he is receiving treatment for stage 4 cancer in the United States, that he is being flown out without his medication, at some point, somebody has to be a human being. Somebody has to stop. And I understand if you're a federal employee, you're just following orders, you might think, or you're worried about your pension, I just don't know. I don't know what would go through somebody's mind to think that they would go along. I mean, I don't know the full details of this. Maybe there was an official somewhere along the way who said, that's it, I resign, I quit, I'm out, I can't do this. But that, to me, is the epitome of just heartlessness and monstrous, just nasty, cruel behavior. And it breaks my heart thinking about it. And it says to me that they're not going to stop.
Oh, absolutely. I think there is more to come. Yeah, we were just talking about the 100 days and how we didn't, we hoped that there would not be a return of Donald Trump to the Oval Office, given his recklessness and the danger that he poses to everything that our nation stands for. But here we are, and we're living it now. And so my question, I guess, is I'm reflecting on the past 100 days, but pretty much what we figured we were going to get, we got. Yeah. What do the next 100 days look like, with more damage to be inflicted? And the Supreme Court's going to hear that case. I think they scheduled it for May. They're going to hear those arguments.
Yeah.
And that case is going to be critical, because I think that is going to have ramifications across the board. And so for the next 100 days, I think things are only going to get worse. We're going to see worse, both violations of rights. At this point, this is human rights we're looking at. We are a country with declining human rights here. The rest of the world is watching this, just in shock at what's happening in the United States.
Yeah.
And it is horrid. And I hope that someone maybe will come forward and really tell the truth about what happened here. I would implore you to do that and actually examine your moral conscience and say, how do you sleep at night? How do you look at yourself in the mirror, knowing that this is a case, especially with a child who's sick?
Yeah. Well, and these people, they have lives to live after Donald Trump is out of office and not in the political scene anymore. And so you have to ask yourself, in 10 years, 15 years from now, what is going to be going through your mind, knowing that you worked in an administration that is deporting U.S. citizen children with cancer. If that's something you can live with, I guess, there you go. That's you. You live your life. But it seems to me, I agree with you. I think there are going to be some people who are searching their souls in the coming days, who are going to be coming out of the woodwork and talking. And the other thing that I brought this up with Michael earlier, I'll bring it up with you, because you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this judge in Milwaukee who was arrested last Friday, and Kash Patel is, tweeting it on X and so on, and celebrating this. I guess the judge she was being let out in handcuffs, or she was let out by officers. I saw a picture along those lines. And Caroline Levitt was asked about this in the briefing room today by Peter Doocy over at Fox. What about a federal judge or even a Supreme Court justice? And she said, well, that's a hypothetical question. Again, I defer you to the Department of Justice for individuals that they are looking at, or individual cases. Are we getting to the point where, there are a lot of mayors and governors who are saying we're not going to go along with these deportation operations? Might we see a mayor arrested, a sheriff arrested?
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah.
I think we're going to test the role of federalism in the states, right? I always say that this is the moment where this moment was made for. But I think you will. And I think they're going to make examples of people. That's why they did it with the judge. Kash Patel posted that, then deleted, and then he celebrated it afterwards. It's all theatrics as well, right? We know this. It's all theatrics, pomp and circumstance for their base and for who they believe their supporters, what the supporters want. And so I think we will see that. I think that they're making examples of people, and I think they're trying to intimidate judges. I think, they're sending a message very clearly to the people sitting on the Supreme Court about where they stand on this. And to me, that's incredibly chilling. And I hope that they have the backbone as Supreme Court justices to stand strong in this, because if this goes, this is it. We are on our path to being a failed democracy the way we are going. And I think they did that on purpose. It wouldn't surprise me. I've been there when they're testing out questions. For him to ask that question to me actually came off as like that was a complete setup so they could send a warning shot across the bow.
Really? Yeah.
That's how I saw it. I was like, okay, you're throwing them that one. How is she going to respond? And she's sending a message clearly there.
Yeah. And when and Pam Bondi was saying, and Kash Patel were both saying, no one is above the law. No one is above the law. I'm sorry, you are acting as though you are above the law. And I think they want to say that other people are acting as if they're above the law, and saying no one is above the law. If you're deporting a 4-year-old with cancer who is a U.S. citizen, you are behaving in a way where you think you're above the law. They've acted in ways that they think that they're above the law numerous times. And so, Pete Hegseth putting out war plans, attack plans over Signal. Obviously, if this were a low-level sergeant or, intel officer or something along, we'd be arrested.
Signal installed on your
if you had texted that to me, We'd both be in jail.
We'd both be in jail. We'd be looking at each other across the cell being like, oopsie. But he also installed Signal on his desktop. Like, where's the line? Where's the line? I mean, if I did that, I'd be in some serious trouble. It's like an area without bones. And so I guess there is no line for them because the law doesn't apply for them. And if they're the people that are supposedly, I guess, in charge of instilling the rule of law and enforcing it, and this is what we've got. And I think this is really concerning and chilling. And I don't know where it's going to stop, which is why I say I'm as much as I was worried about, we saw some glimpses of it in the past 100 days. I am just very concerned about the aggression that we're going to see in the next 100 days and how they're going to push things to the limit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the next 1,000 days that should worry everybody. And, I mean, this is not only is this a, Trump is king, he's above the law kind of administration. It's a no accountability administration. I mean, that's putting things mildly. Trump did this interview with The Atlantic. On Signalgate and Pete Hegseth, he said, quote, "I think he's going to get it together." Trump said of Pete Hegseth. Oh, that's nice. It's sort of like, when, your kid isn't quite mastering going to the bathroom just yet, like potty training, you're in the middle of potty training and you're trying the trick where you put the Cheerios in the toilet and say, here, aim at the Cheerios. And that's what they're doing with little Pete Hegseth right now. Yeah. He's not quite getting it. He's just not quite getting it. And so Trump says, I think he's going to get it together. And he said, I had a talk with him, a positive talk, but I had a talk with him. Okay.
Oh, great. What did he do? Give him punched him on the shoulder and said, hey, buddy, you got to really get it together, buddy. But you're doing an amazing job. You're doing good work. Don't worry about it. It's just, they're all out to attack you, but keep it up. Meanwhile, I guarantee you the military, I mean, I've heard from the community that the jokes are abound, by the way. He's completely lost the respect of the workforce. And that is what is really actually the most depressing thing of it, is that the military community, the intelligence officers, all the civilians that work in that department, it's a massive Department of Defense. I started my career in the Pentagon. He's the butt of the jokes.
Yeah.
The leader.
It's not good. I know. I was at a baseball game last week and you hear things like Keg's breath, like there's, a lot of nicknames flying around DC right now. But the thing that is ridiculous, since we're at 100 days, I mean, the thing that's ridiculous about the whole thing is that this time around, and you would know this all too well, Olivia, it seems that this time around, Trump is totally resistant to firing anybody. People can just bumble around and make mistakes in this new administration, and he's just not going to do anything about it because he doesn't want to hand out a scalp. He thinks it's going to reward the media if somebody loses their job and so on.
That's what happens when he is staffed with complete loyalists. And I think that is a thing. He is not going to give anyone else a win on them. Yeah. And so regardless of the implications, and I would say, if anyone's coming close, it's Pete Hegseth with a number of incidents and the things that we're hearing about his staff and his own chief of staff. Apparently, I read an article about the cocaine in his office.
Wow.
If that is true. I mean, that is incredibly serious. I can't even picture that or imagine it. Yeah. These are the type of individuals serving the highest levels of government, which is certainly concerning.
And we should note allegations are allegations. We don't know. Maybe everything is just fine and dandy, but it doesn't look like it. And I was talking about this with Michael a little bit. The thing that Trump is doing is he is pushing the rest of the world to the left. So, you're seeing this election in Canada today where it looks like Mark Carney is going to be the prime minister. And, it looked like Canada was trending right and was moving in a conservative direction. Trump comes in. That's not going to be the case. Apparently, the Australians have an election coming up. Apparently, that's going to be the case in Australia. And so, and I've heard this is happening in a number of places in Western Europe, and I suspect we'll be the lagging indicator. The United States, we don't have a parliamentary form of government or an election around the corner, and so we won't see these things until maybe the fall with these gubernatorial races or the midterms next year. But let's just hope these Democratic guardrails hang in there.
Yeah, and we've got a ways to go. And what I would say is, I think I would call on the international community to hold us accountable. I never thought I'd say that about my own country, but it's important, and it's important to do so. And as a career national security official, to watch this happening here. But I would say to them, keep paying attention to what's going on in the United States and call us out. Be very public. Call us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Olivia, great to see you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I definitely wanted to get to the immigration piece of all of this, and my feeling is, my sense of it is we're going to see, and this is what we saw during the first administration on that issue. We're going to see more dehumanizing events in the coming days. I just think that that's what we're going to be seeing, and the public needs to brace themselves for it. Trump is going to continue to say people voted for this, that they voted for cruelty, they voted for mass deportations that are carried out with a sledgehammer, and I think that's what we're just going to see. I just don't. He's not going to stop, and the Supreme Court may try to stop him, and I don't think he's going to listen to that. And it's going to, shit's going to go down. That's my guess.
I think I think we are in for the long haul in how bad this gets. But it doesn't mean that we don't continue to take a stand. We don't continue to fight. And I think we have to have our voices heard. And I think we keep showing up, and we have the backs of the officials that do take a stand up against them. We've got to have their backs too as they fight this out.
Well, Olivia, I'm grateful to you, because here we are. You're my last guest on this show on this 99th day of this new Trump administration. I'm glad that you're in the fight, that you're still speaking out. Others like you are speaking out, and that is, and this is not to puff ourselves up or anything. This goes for all the folks out there at home who are watching this, who are listening, who are showing up at rallies, who are showing up at town halls, who are showing up at demonstrations, who are leaving comments even on this program, or taking part in the conversation, the larger conversation on places like Substack. It's that engagement that is going to be one of the guardrails. And so you have to continue to keep doing what you're doing out there. And that goes for you too, Olivia.
I'll be here.
I know you will.
I'm in the trenches, and I'm more committed now than ever, especially watching, Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes and what's happening with Bill Owens, and good for him for calling out his own company and going on record with that, and just saying it how it is to America about what's going on here across the board.
Yeah, the truth needs to be said now more than ever. No question about it. Great to see you, Olivia. Thanks a lot.
Like, really take care.
It. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
That's my friend Olivia Troye. And it's almost as though she knew what I was going to end this show with. And that is, I did want to make a couple of comments about 60 Minutes, not to sound like Andy Rooney here at the end of this program. But, when 60 Minutes has to address 60 Minutes, we're in a lot of trouble, folks. Last night, 60 Minutes did address the departure of executive producer Bill Owens. Scott Pelley, the longtime correspondent on that program, he explained to viewers on that program last night, this is according to the Associated Press, that Paramount, the parent company, has begun to supervise 60 Minutes and their stories in new ways. This is what Scott Pelley said, quote, "None of our stories has been blocked," Pelley said, "but Bill," talking about Bill Owens, "felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires. No one here is happy about it, but in resigning, Bill proved he was the right person to lead 60 Minutes all along." And the question becomes, and I'm not going to do it. I saw somebody say, "Can you do an Andy Rooney impersonation?" You ever wonder, remember Andy Rooney? You ever wonder? That's how he would end those shows. But in all seriousness, you have to wonder what's next for 60 Minutes. The tick, tick, tick of the stopwatches there. Those fabulous correspondents and people are there. People like Scott Pelley are there. But the public must have the assurance that 60 Minutes will continue to be 60 Minutes. And whoever is put in charge of that program, ultimately on a permanent basis as the executive producer, must have the confidence of the American people. 60 Minutes is not just a TV show. It's not just another news program. It is of legend status in this country. It's a national treasure in this country. It's been duplicated in other countries around the world. I once did an interview with 60 Minutes Australia because they have a 60 Minutes program down there. And you can't have a situation in the United States where the most prominent news program in this country, in the most powerful country on earth, is gun shy. and is incapable of making independent decisions when it comes to what it's going to put on its program, because they're worried about what the parent company might think, and the parent company is thinking what the guy in the White House might think. And that is why it is vitally important that we have a free press in this country, that you have independent journalism in this country. And you have to have people like myself able to say in a journalistically sound way what is going on in the world, and be able to do that with an independent voice, with a voice that is not concerned about what the guy in the really nice office upstairs is thinking about. Because if we're in that kind of a situation in this country, as I said last week, when 60 Minutes is in trouble, we're all in trouble. And we just can't have that kind of media system in this country. I've talked about this time and again on this program. When I go out and speak to different events, panel discussions, and so on, I talk about this all the time. The information system of the United States of America is broken, ladies and gentlemen. It's broken. When much of the press is owned by giant corporations, and those giant corporations are worried about mergers and acquisitions and worried about the White House calling them and complaining about stories and so on, we don't have, by and large, independent media. And that is why it is so critically important that places like Substack continue to thrive in its independence, and that you still have independence in journalism in America. And people will say, and I've heard this from time to time, my goodness, why, Jim, why do you have to give your hot take on this, your opinion on this? We don't need to hear your perspectives on this. Okay, that's your God-given right as an American to express that viewpoint. That's fine. But I'm here to tell you, as a journalist, as an American, it is absolutely my point of view that from time to time, it is okay for me to tell you what my perspective is on all of this. And this is I'm just going to explain to the naysayers out there who are critical of this. It is a very American thing to say that we need to have independence in our press, independence in our media. As Walter Cronkite used to say, journalism isn't important to democracy. It isn't vital to democracy. It is democracy. And if a place like 60 Minutes can no longer be relied upon as an independent voice out there, folks, what are we doing? What are we doing? I've gone on a little longer than Andy Rooney might at the end of his show, but it's an important topic. The press has to remain free in America. And that not only means free from government interference, it means free from corporate interference too. And corporate overlords who are just worried about the bottom line or cutting the next deal or worried about what the guy in the White House thinks. That is also vitally important. And I would argue that that's not just giving you an opinion or a hot take. That is very much sharing an American viewpoint. We have to remain independent. We have to stay free. And with that, I want to thank Michael Cohen, Olivia Troye, and thank all of you for watching. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.